All right, let's look this morning at data validation, part one. And yesterday, it hit me that this would be really good to cover because during the day, Dash went past $15. You can see, at least in this example here, it's 1480. And I knew immediately that that was wrong, that that was an invalid data value. And so I was like, this is a good thing when you're a good example of when you're trying to retrieve data and you want to validate whether that's correct or not. So the very first part of this is, have you developed an intuition for the data? And what I mean by that is what's normal and what's expected. And both of those questions cannot be answered with a couple of data values. And that's probably one of the reasons why I think this can be frustrating sometimes, is that it generally takes a few months, and it can take even longer than that, before you really have an idea of what is expected and what's normal. For instance, let's just do a hypothetical, or side example, not hypothetical, but just a side example is, how do you think a doctor knows whether body temperature is a fever or not? Right? Do you think that's based on just a couple of data points from the past, or do you think we have a general idea that human body temperature is about 98.6 and there might be a range for individuals, right? It's the same thing if you've ever personally managed or monitored your blood pressure. You may know that your blood pressure falls within a certain range, but how do you know that if you've only measured your blood pressure once or twice, right? So you should know what's normal and what's expected. Then you want to define that expected range or that normal range, okay? Now, there are some cases in which legitimate values will fall outside of that range, okay? And those exceptional times are, those may be indications that something there's an opportunity. It could be an indication that there's something wrong, like in the case of fever. In the case of blood pressure, let's say it's really high, it could be something's wrong. In the case of markets, like let's say Dash, it jumps to $15. It could be an opportunity, right? In fact, there was someone, I think, complaining on Twitter yesterday that they bought a Bitcoin at like Dash at like $42 or something. That would not be an opportunity for him. It would be a huge loss, right? But it could be that there is an opportunity there. It could be that there's something seriously wrong there, or it could be just bad data, right? Keep in mind that in the case of, and this cryptocurrency example here, because these are completely free markets, it could be valid that Dash is $14. It's unlikely that it made a jump of or doubled in a couple of minutes, but it could be valid, because that can happen with these. In the same way, literally, I could wake up and every one of these are zero tomorrow. It's totally possible. There's no interventions going on. It's not like, the mainstream markets where, like in this index market example, the S&P 500 is just not going to fall below, 1,700. It's just not. They're not going to let it fall below 1,700, because that would just cause massive problems. And so you kind of know they're going to intervene. They're either going to, engage in QE4, negative interest rates, lower interest, whatever they're going to be able to do, they're going to do it. Helicopter money. So that's just something to consider, that would be very unlikely to occur, whereas in these other markets, normal, or the expected range, can be very broad. I mean, it would be totally normal to wake up and Bitcoin would be zero tomorrow. That could totally happen. It's not a market that has interventions. So when you deal with data, very first thing is to know what should be expected, what is that normal range. And unfortunately, that's going to take a little bit to collect. You're not going to know that right off the bat. Now, in the case of, if let's say you're doing some ETL work, generally speaking, if you're doing a backload of a lot of data, you will be able to build kind of an expected range. And we'll go over that in some of the later parts.